We're getting close. All right. Well, here we are. The word on the block, and I am joined by two auction professionals today. And I want to get right to it. Jay Cash is here for a reason, and we're going to share that in just a second. But I don't want to waste any more of anybody's time. I want to introduce our guest today, and he will probably not want me to read his entire bio, but I want to tell you a little bit about him, and then I want to let him tell you about himself. But today is Mr. Craig King. And if you haven't been around the auction industry, you probably aren't familiar with the name, but if you are an auction professional, you know exactly what that name stands for within our industry. Over 35 years of experience, the past president of what used to be called AMI, and we now refer to it as CAI. He served on the auction committee for the National Association of Realtors. He's a past director of not only the NAA, but also the NAF. And most importantly, I would think on his resume, he's also a National Auctioneers Association Hall of Famer. But more importantly, the things that I've heard over the last couple of weeks, just a wealth of knowledge, an overall great guy, an Alabama native. Mr. Craig King, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we will get this shared so everybody will stop blowing up my phone and asking, where's all this knowledge accessible at?
Well, thank you for that introduction, and it's a pleasure to be with you guys here. I want to share a little bit with you about selling luxury properties at auction, and a lot of guys and companies are getting into that or have gotten into that, and certainly here we're here to share ideas with you that may be helpful for you. So it's my pleasure to be here. Our company, JP King, we were founded back in 1915, and actually we're founded up in Tullahoma, Tennessee. So we're our roots come from Middle Tennessee, and so it's a pleasure to be with you guys here today.
You know, most importantly, Craig, it's exciting because I said there's a reason Jay Cash is here, and I've traveled up and down the road with Jay as I'm still sharing this. I apologize, but I've traveled up and down the road with Jay a few times recently, and he keeps telling me about 2018. He said, I made a lot of money based off of just a few things I learned in a class that you taught in 2018. So I figured with the last name of Cash, he already was set, right, from the beginning. No. But now he said, no, I mean, hey, what a perfect name for an auctioneer, right? But most importantly, he says you made him a lot of cash in 2018 by teaching him some stuff. Talk about that, Jay.
Yeah, I will tell you. So it's conference and show, which may not happen anytime soon, but we'll eventually get back into that. But, you know, you teach at the Land Institute, the summit sessions for real estate and different things. But at the conference and show, if you've not been, most everybody watching has been, you know, they've got the long rooms of classes to take. You know, there's everything under the sun. And at 11 o'clock on a Thursday, it was luxury real estate with Craig King. And I thought, you know what, probably be something I could learn something at. I'm going to go. I went and sat in the front row. I still got my yellow notepad. And, you know, it may not have been the greatest class in the world, but I thought, I mean, I learned so much there. But the first thing you said about auctions you may not have invented it, but to me you did. So I always attribute this quote to you. All right. It's the finest assets in the world are sold at auction, and real estate is no exception. The affluent, the wealthy, they are accustomed to buying things when they want it immediately. They don't like waiting 6 months for things to happen. And auctions really do resonate with the truly wealthy folks in America when they want to get something sold. And you went on to teach, you know, hour and a half, and I got notes that go on for days. But the reason I say that I made money off that class was it probably wasn't a week later, we got a call to go down and this beautiful, what I call luxury home. And if I wasn't just repeating everything I heard you say, and man, we had a great sale. It worked out. It was a fantastic auction. And I credit a lot of that just to sitting in that classroom and listening to you. I don't know if you remember teaching it, but it was very, very impactful on me in 2018.
Well, thank you. Actually, we had a lot of good experienced people in there, and everyone was sharing ideas, and that helped make for a productive class.
Yeah. What I want to know, Craig, he said that you've made him a lot of money. Have you seen any gifts in the mail, or I mean, has he sent you anything, a letter or a card or anything?
No, but he did give me a thank you, so that I guess it's about as good as it gets.
Oh,
in front of 900 people. Yeah, in the next night in the IAC, in my interview question, I name dropped you.
Oh, okay.
That's worth a lot. Hey, Shane, you know, and something else in his bio, I think, aren't you treasurer, NAA treasurer?
Yes, I am. I'm treasurer. It's a 2-year term, so I've got a little over a year left in that term.
Okay. Hopefully we make it another year, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll be okay.
I think so too. Hey, Craig, I'm going to let you kind of lead the discussion, but I did want to touch on a couple things. And I'm a first generation auction professional. Military background. Obviously, wasn't born into the business. Didn't know much about the business until I became interested in it. But looking into kind of what you guys do. As you noted in your intro, your company has been around for a long time, and obviously you're kind of a fourth generation. I'm familiar with Christy as well. I know she's a very successful auction professional as well, and has really been helpful to me on a couple things. But what's important to me, I think, as a message out there right now, because we're in uncharted territory. Right, our industry is at a point right now that we haven't seen, definitely in my lifetime. But I noticed, kind of researching your company over the last couple of days, you point out, and I love the fact that you point out that your company has withstood 2 world wars. And I say your company, your family's company, the company you're currently the president of, 2 world wars, the Great Depression, the collapse of 2008, 9/11. So kind of in your mind, regardless of what asset class, what's your message kind of to the industry? Kind of take a deep breath and realize that we've made it through this, or like where are you going in this direction? How are you pointing your team?
Well, anytime you go through what we've gone through or in the process of going through, it's going to bring about change. And, that's the great thing about our industry and auctioneers. We can change on the fly. We will adapt and we will be successful. I think back, of course, during the downturn of '08, that was difficult for a lot of people, but it created a lot of opportunity for auction professionals. I remember after 9/11, that was pretty tough. We had an auction for the Russell Corporation in North Georgia. We had 50 tracts of waterfront property that we sold about 3 weeks after 9/11, and they were asking, "Well, do you think it'll still work, or should we cancel this?" And we had tremendous interest, and we told them we recommended they go forward, and they did, and had hundreds of registered bidders and a very successful auction. So the point is that there are buyers out there, as they get more confident and confidence in the economy and all, they'll continue to spend money. The people with money will spend money. And as auction professionals, we've got to adapt in how we take our properties to market where we can achieve the highest prices. And that's why we're looking at lots of different things as an industry. A major shift toward online auctions for firms that maybe haven't done that in the past. Of course, a lot of auction firms do the live and simulcast auctions, and that's a great tool as well. So it's just adapting is my message, and it's going to be okay. There's going to be, as with every downturn, there's going to be opportunities for us in the auction industry.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I know Jay's got a couple of things for you, but I did want to touch on this, not only because you're serving as a treasurer, but you've been very active in the National Auctioneers Association. I know you're also active in the state association there in Alabama and probably several other states surrounding. This time, and Jay has said this, we've never felt more connected to the other professionals in our industry, because there's a lot of things that have gone on. And specifically, I want to give a shout out to the leadership. Not only the board of directors, but also, the administrative staff, the executive staff. Man, there's no playbook for this, and as a professional association, we look to the leadership during these times. And I think they've done an outstanding job. And you've obviously been a part of that. So talk a little bit about what the future looks like as far as the NAA. I mean, I think you would probably say it's been a pivotal influence on your professional career. So there's some folks out there watching this that may or may not be a part of the National Auctioneers Association. What's your message to them?
Well, my message is this is the association for our industry, and it is viable and it's active and strong leadership. And I would encourage those to get involved if you are a member currently. And if you're not a member, become a member. I can say that your board and executive committee and Hannes Combast, our CEO, they have been working amazingly during this downturn to communicate with our members and to provide information and best practices during this virus and how we can conduct our businesses. Just so much information and surveys and what's going on with other auctioneers. And all of this is available to us as members just by going to our NAA website. So thank you for that. And I concur. I have been on a lot of boards in my career, and I can tell you that this NAA board this year has been phenomenal, and they have been just working so hard for our members.
I'm going to go back to the class that I told you about, where I first really got to meet you. I remember sitting in the front row, and it was like, I was not going to miss that class that day. And so many times, just it's so important to be in the room, just to be in the group, even if it's virtually, you can learn so much by being plugged in. And that really is a value that I'll credit back to the NAA. I mean, that one class that I took, it probably wasn't anything that I didn't know, but it just was a different way of hearing it and seeing it. And it stimulated a thought process that has helped me grow my business exponentially. And I really am thankful forever that you took the time to share. And I try to take the same lead and give as much as I can to anybody that asks me questions. Now, when I say luxury real estate, in my world, it's anything over $400,000. That's luxury real estate. But just a quick run through of JP King's website. I mean, it's multi-million-dollar properties all over the country. And I tell anybody this. A lot of us, you may go to a friend of yours that may be in the auction profession. And you may not be all that impressed, or a competitor down the road, but if you go see JP King, the production is phenomenal. I don't remember my first JP King sale, but one that stems out, I still have the brochure, just the ballroom production of that. When did that start? How has it evolved? Because I know you guys do a lot of multi-par. It's a little bit slower of a process. When you sell your luxury real estate, it's not, one and done in 5 minutes. It's a production. And I think that's what an auction should be. How have your auctions evolved, from when you started back in the early 90s with the real luxury properties to today?
Well, we were doing ballroom auctions as early as the 70s.
Okay.
I remember a big auction in Birmingham, Alabama, where we had pulled together millions of dollars worth of commercial properties for that particular auction and sold it from the Hyatt Hotel in downtown Birmingham. And so I remember that back from the 70s. And then, of course, we've done major land auctions from the ballrooms. But there's certain properties that we like being out on the property itself. If we're selling a waterfront development or a condominium development out on the lake, we will put up the big auction tents and cater it and have the music and put on the show, because that's a lot of what I think we as auction professionals do. The production, we're setting the tone for the auction. That those are the tools that we use as professionals to get more money, to create excitement in the property. And so that's something we've continued to do. The luxury properties, as you say, is a little bit different. You put on a little more of a sophisticated event. Can't talk today, but with, high-end catering and a harpist or a musician playing and doing tours. And we've sold some of the luxury properties where we're in our tuxedos or our nice suits, or, just whatever's appropriate for that. But again, it's all a part of the theme that we set for that particular property that carries through to auction day.
With luxury property, so in Tennessee, like I said, I'm not selling true luxury property, but I pretend I do sometimes. Take pretty pictures. Where do you feel, as far as a realtor out there, the dialogue you might have with if you're an auctioneer anywhere in the country and you see a house that's listed and it's been on the market for some time, is there a dialogue that to approach something if you don't know a realtor, or how do you even get that idea planted in their head when you see a property that you think might be suited for auction? I mean, where do you begin that process?
Well, you've got to introduce the concept, and maybe there is a realtor involved. I think about right there in Middle Tennessee, Barbara Mandrell's home that we sold, and her home was listed with a close friend of hers, And we approached that friend and we just said, do you think that Miss Mandrell would consider an auction? She's been on the market for a while. And of course, this is going back a number of years, but she said, I don't know, I'll introduce it. And then one day she called us back. She said, yeah, they're interested in a meeting. So we sat down with them. We went through the process, and they were ready to downsize. They had a tremendous log cabin, a very beautiful property. And anyway, they were ready to simplify and downsize. And so it made sense for them.
Was it called the Fontana Mansion then, or is that the name that they've named it now?
It was Fontana then, Fontanelle, excuse me. Yeah. So it was Fontanelle. That was the name that they had for the property. And so anyway, so yes, I think what we want to do is we just want to let brokers and sellers of luxury properties know there is another option. And as I introduced in that class in Jacksonville, and we had that course, ultra high net worth individuals are often selling businesses for tens or hundreds of millions of dollars in a matter of weeks. And then their home is sitting on the market sometimes for years. And those people didn't get where they are by sitting back waiting on things to happen. They go out and they make things happen. So while they are mostly not financially motivated, they understand the time value of money and the cost of ownership. And these properties, it can be costing them $20,000 or $30,000 a month to just maintain the landscaping and keep that property up, and maybe a second or a third home. And they understand that if they're not using it, they need to be turning that into cash and putting it somewhere else. And that's when the auction can come and help them achieve that goal.
We've got questions coming in. I'm going to ask one. You get the question, Shane, because I'll forget this one. How important do sellers at this price point, do they appreciate the terms and conditions that, they set the terms, they set the conditions? Does that appeal to them more like it does in a humble estate sale that we might do every weekend, or do your terms change, and do you have to protect your seller even more when you're selling an asset of that size?
Well, the terms are very similar. Of course, we do want, these sellers have often put up tens of thousands of dollars to market these properties. So we want to know that we've got some certified funds to allow bidders to bid. So we do that. We want to have some in hard money. And we typically get a significant down payment, normally 10%. But these buyers will close normally in 30 days, very similar. But what they appreciate, and I think about, again, Mrs. Mandrell, when we sold her property, one of the things she told me was she liked that we did was, she said, it's not easy to keep this property show ready. And so what I like, she said, what I like about what y'all do is you're going to be here, you're going to show it for 2 weeks, and then it's going to be all over. So she gets it ready one time, as opposed to having to try to keep it show ready for what could be a year or more for these properties. So that is one of the benefits they really like. They can control the showings. They get it ready once, they get it sold and get it done.
Well, and I think that's going to probably come to fruition a lot more often here in the near future, because a lot of the forecasts that I have seen is the liquidity issue is really for some of your high net worth folks. They can be worth a lot, but liquidity is a big deal. So I think it's important to have that kind of in your back pocket, being able to do some things. And I'm curious, Craig, about co-op type programs, because let's face it, and I think maybe some auctioneers get this wrong. This is my personal opinion, but you're good at what you're good at, right? And you find your space of what you're good at. But sometimes auctioneers kind of want to hold on to something that they get. And I think we need to kind of embrace it with an open arm mentality. And for example, I'm not a luxury real estate auctioneer. Would I like to be? Absolutely. Would I like to surround myself with people that I can learn from? Yes. But I don't think that if I got that phone call for the Fontanelle, oh, by the way, it's up on the market again, in case you didn't know that, as of recently, I think they might have already completed that transaction. But here's kind of what I'm getting at, and talk to this just a second, and then we've got a question from someone that's logged on. But, if someone calls us in Tennessee, maybe calls somebody in California, and it's a $3, $4, $5 million project, instead of kind of holding on to that and wanting to run with it under your brand, partnering with someone like JP King is important, and kind of talk through that process. That happens, right?
Oh yeah, that happens both ways. I think about other auctioneers that have called us with properties like that, and they didn't have the expertise, or they may have been in a competitive situation against another luxury auctioneer with an extensive track record, and they needed JP King's track record and experience to help secure the deal. So that works. And then I also think about another property we sold up in Virginia, and it was the Kluge Winery that actually our president Donald Trump bought. But when we were selling the Kluge Winery, we co-opted with someone to sell all of the equipment and winery equipment and all because that wasn't something we had the expertise in. So that works both ways. But that's the beauty of our association and the National Auctioneers Association, and that's why it's important we get involved. Is because there are experts in so many different fields, be it coins or guns or equipment. There are people out there that know a whole lot more about it than maybe we do, and we can share and co-op together with them. And that's a great point, Shane.
Awesome. And we're about 20 minutes in, so we don't want to take up too much of your time, but this is important. And it's a weird thing about this app that we use. We'll find out who this is afterwards, but you have to agree to allow the platform to utilize your name. And this is really a question that we always get as auctioneers. How do you talk to the clients about setting up a reserve price for a luxury property auction? And I mean, there's 100 different approaches to that, I know, but kind of talk through that for this viewer of what JP King's approach is when we talk about setting reserves.
That is very difficult. Because these people have spent millions of dollars on these homes, and typically they're highly customized. I think of a home that we sold in North Carolina. They had over $1 million in cabinetry and the woodwork in the property. So they've spent a lot of money, be it, we've had some with indoor racquetball courts and all of these things that are highly specialized. But when you go to sell it, cost doesn't equate to value. Value is what the market will pay, not what the cost was in constructing that property. So we'll do it two ways. One, we have a very frank conversation based on either our experience or information we pull in that market. And there is, in our opinion, a discount factor that you need to factor in some markets. And that is the as is, where is non-contingent sale, taking what may be a year or more sale process and condense it down to 60 days, a little bit more of a quick sale. There's a discount factor there that we talk with clients about and make sure that they're prepared for that. And then with some clients, they don't know what that market is for their home, and we will encourage them to let's just leave it open as far as setting the reserve. You're telling us you want to sell. We're here to get you the best price possible. We're confident you're going to make the right decision when the time comes. And then we work it to auction day and we get that highest and best offer. And then we tell them if we believe that's the best price they're going to get, that they need to accept that. And many times they do. So sometimes we set it in advance is the answer. Sometimes we wait until auction day or just before the auction.
Yeah. One thing that, just love being in the room with you, because you just learn like just how you say things is great. You got to have demonstrated capacity. You've got to be able to show this is what we've done. We've got a track record. You can be real good. Any auctioneer can be good and talk a good auction game. But I found when you get in the room, when you get at the table, you got to be real good because they're going to sense if you don't know what you're talking about or if you're out of your league there. And I can only imagine the confidence you get just by doing it over and over again. And you can just open your catalog of look at these multi-million-dollar estates that you've had. When that class you taught in Jacksonville, you said it's still a process. It doesn't happen immediately on the first conversation. They still have to go back and consider if that's something they want to do, which is what most of us probably deal with. Talk about that process, just, how long it takes you to get a multi-million-dollar property. Is it the same as, grandma's estate here in Murfreesboro, or does the time frame change as far as your prep in an auction?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, we have met with clients, and first meeting, it was obvious they were ready to go, and we moved forward. We signed it right there at the first meeting, but that's very rare. On the other hand, our 50th state, when we finally went into our 50th state, it was Alaska, and it was someone that we had met with 7 years earlier. and we just continued to stay in touch with them. And after 7 years, it was an older couple. They had a nice luxury property. They called us and said, we're ready. And they sold it at absolute auction and had a very successful sale. So sometimes it happens quickly, sometimes it doesn't. Now, once you sign the contract, many times, depending on the location of the property and who your buyer market is, you may need to give it a little bit more time on the market. And 60 to 90 days is pretty common in selling luxury properties, because these people are busy. These buyers are busy, and they've got to get this scheduled, and you got to create the urgency to get it on their calendar. So you want to give it a little, I like to say, let it mature on the market just a little bit, where people have a chance to read about it and respond to the auction and come see it.
Well, sure, because I mean, the properties that you're selling, oftentimes you mentioned a racquetball court. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes into these customizations. And, we like to say in Tennessee, I work for a gentleman named Philip Traylor, and he says there's a butt for every seat. Sometimes there's just not as many butts for the seat we're trying to sell. And that's a different way of putting it. But if you really break that down into its purest form, how many people are looking for a luxury real estate piece of property, a luxury piece of property? A lot. But how many people are looking for a piece of luxury real estate that has a 7-car garage, a maintenance bay, and a racquetball court? So, I think it's such a great specialty, because it reinforces what you and Jay are so good at putting at the forefront of our industry, is that auctions are no longer and have never been for the dead, desperate, and divorced. The finest assets, and I don't understand. And this is coming from a 7-year auction background, and coming from the military. I want to scream from the mountaintops and say, why in the world are you bragging about selling that piece of real estate traditionally in 4 hours?
Yeah.
I don't get it. I have realtor friends here in town that'll say, oh, we sold that in 4 hours. And I'm thinking, oh my, if you would have just allowed us, because once you put a price tag on it, very seldom are you ever get more than that price, right?
Yeah.
Such an eye-opening scenario, and it's great to be a part of an association, and to be a part of a brotherhood, if you will, and a sisterhood of just professionals. And I want to thank you, Craig, for not what you've only done for the auction industry, but also within the association, and your continued service. Jay and I are lucky enough to be on the board of directors here in Tennessee. It's a thankless job, and we're well aware of that. The pay's not great either, by the way, and sometimes you take an absolute beating, and I wouldn't want to be in your shoes right now, because regardless if we end up in San Diego or not, I think what's important to note, and you said this in the beginning, we're going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. This too shall pass. I appreciate your time. I want to let Jay wrap it up, let you give some final comments, and then we'll jump off of here.
Great.
You're muted, Jay.
Yeah, I'm not going to let this go. I got you on here. You can't get off. So I'm reading. I have read this a long time ago, Wild Ride. You know about this book here. That's the rise and the tragic fall of Calumet. Yeah. I ask Christy about it all the time, and she goes, I'm just out of auction school when this took place back in '92. But what is amazing, this is one of the best-selling books written about thoroughbred racing. If you've ever gone to Lexington, this is the farm that just the whole town's built around, and they had to sell it at auction. J.P. King did it, and here towards the end of the book, towards the end of their history, they talk all about the J.P. King auction and just how big of a production that was. You were there. I know Christy was there, fresh out of auction school, I think. Can we go back to that day and you tell me about that, what you remember back in '92, I guess it was? I think it was '92.
Yeah, it was '92. Well, that was, as you can imagine, a real exciting event. Calumet Horse Farm at public auction, and we partnered with our friends at Swine Broad and Denton, and they worked with us on that. And one thing that I remember is when our buyer bought that property, there were probably 5,000 people there at that auction. It was just, when the catalog for the auction came out, they handled all the personal property. We were selling those for $20 a piece.
Catalog, the brochure. Yeah, that's what Christy said. All around town, people wanted to buy the catalog to see what. Yeah.
And we had those available for the first day of inspection, and we had cars lined up down the highway pulling in to buy their catalogs so they could come and view the property and all. But after the conclusion of that auction, the farm sold for 17 million. All of the personal property over 2 days brought another $2 million. But I remember our buyer, as soon as he bought the property, we invited him up to the stage, and he said, I try to remember exactly how he said it. He said something about, oh, so many people were fearful a developer might buy it. And his comment was, I just want you to know that nothing on Calumet is going to change, but maybe the fences will just be a little whiter. And they gave him a standing ovation that went on and on and on. I'm looking around, and men and women are crying. And it was probably the most emotional auction that in my career I've ever been a part of.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole article in this best-selling book, that starts out, J.P. King spent nearly $300,000 to promote the absolute auction at Calumet Farms. Ads appeared in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, in the Financial Times of London, various Japanese and European publications. Over 25,000 brochures were mailed, including one was sent to Queen Elizabeth, who visited the farm in 1984. I mean, I don't know how you top this. That's amazing. They're still writing about it in books.
But you know what? There are other properties out there that deserve to be sold at auction the same way.
Yes, they do.
Our jobs as auction professionals are go find those opportunities.
That's right.
Hey, I appreciate you jumping on here talking to us. I know your time's valuable. I appreciate you to the moon and back for hopping on here for Shane and I. Shane, you got
No, Craig, I mean, I think that's a perfect way to wrap it up. You're right. That's our job. We need to get out there and let the public know that we're available for them, especially during these times. And you guys, I appreciate both of you being on here. And Craig, if you got anything else, we'll sign off and hope to see you in San Diego, sir.
Great. Thank you, guys. Take care.
All right, guys. Thanks. That's the word on the block. We'll see you soon.
All right.